So this is going to be one of the more important videos I do this year, because the sign of Aquarius, which has pretty much been a non-starter of a sign for a long time and has really not hosted a lot, really has not shown a lot of energy for a very, very long time, is now, for the next 2 years at least, one of the most important signs in the zodiac, if not the most important sign of the zodiac. And one could argue that that's true for the next couple of years, but one could also argue that in a sense, for each of us, it's important for the next 20 years, depending on where it is that Aquarius sits in your chart and what house it occupies. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the grand conjunction on December the 21st. Sorry, there's going to be people walking around in the background because there's some people picnicking at the back, and getting this video set up has had its own sort of Aquarian delight to it. Sort of constantly being tested. So, irrespective, and there's so much to say about the sign of Aquarius, to be perfectly honest with you, that if I do get cut off, I'm not going to retape the video. So if it's cut off, I'm just going to put in the description area on YouTube that it's been cut off, and we'll leave it at that, and we'll take it from there. And I'll keep doing more videos. The so-called grand conjunction on December the 21st, 2020, occurred in the sign of Aquarius, with Jupiter and Saturn coming together. And the grand conjunction sets up the menu, or sort of an important, I'm going to be bold enough to say it sets up the primary theme for us for the next 20 years. So wherever Aquarius sits in your chart, what house it occupies, and what that house stands for. The sign of Aquarius, in and of itself, is a fascinatingly misunderstood sign, and if you've been watching my channel, you'll know that I feel this way, and I've explained it to you before as a sign that is often imbued with Piscean qualities and not Aquarian qualities. Some of this has to do with the musical hair and the age of Aquarius, and the idea of sort of hippie, compassionate, all-encompassing, all-welcoming charity, whereas Aquarius, as a sign that is ruled by Saturn originally, and now by Uranus, and for me, Saturn and Uranus, is a much more clinically rational sign. In fact, it is the rational sign. You know, the last of the signs in each of the four qualities, water, air, earth, and fire, sort of heighten to an almost sort of they imbue the qualities of this sort of relationship that they belong to, this family that they belong to, with a passionate my way or the highway quality. You know, all four of these signs have a sense of dogma about them, and by four I mean Sagittarius, fire, Capricorn, earth, Aquarius, air, and Pisces, water. They have a kind of a my way or the highway quality to them in each of, you know, and with Aquarius, it's about the mind and it's about rationality. And Aquarius is very much a butter doesn't melt in my mouth sign. It is a, if it doesn't make sense to me, if it is not rational, if I can't question it and get the answer, if it is not provable, it is a scientific sign, it is a technological sign, it is very much a humanitarian sign, but through measurable, impactful, rational, reordering and restructuring what we think. It is a perennially questioning sign. And in many regards, it's a sign through which Saturn questions itself. As I've mentioned to you, every sign successively provides an antidote to some sort of area or place where a sign can get stuck. So with the sign of Capricorn, the sign that precedes Aquarius, also ruled by Capricorn, rules and authority and being by the book, and what is good or bad and what is right and wrong being implemented in certain ways, very process-driven, very orderly, very much about a certain kind of power structure-oriented, its own kind of rationality, seeming rationality, very hierarchical, very structured, sort of this is what is right, this is what is wrong, this is how it works, this is how karma is dished out. Well, you did this, then this happened, so this is why this, and this is how you play the game, and this is how you win. And if you put in a certain amount of effort, and you put in a certain amount of order, then you know, this is what's going to happen. And then when Saturn gets to, or creates, I would almost say, or rules the sign of Aquarius, it starts to question its own dogma in kind of an equally dogmatic way. You know, you get things like, really? So just because something is illegal makes it wrong? This doesn't make sense to me. Just because something is legal makes it right? It doesn't make sense to me. Just because these are the rules. Aquarius is all about questioning the rules that Capricorn adopts in order to reach a certain measure of success. Wow, it is a noisy, busy afternoon. Listen, it is January the 10th, and it is 71 degrees in Los Angeles. So can you blame anyone for trying to find their own piece of socially distanced being out and aboutness? So if it all feels like, you know, like they're wolves who are crying to the moon, well, we're all sort of crying to the sun a little bit and trying to find our warmth and sunshine in this park right now. I hope you can get some of that quality through this video. But with Aquarius, Saturn and the sign of Aquarius start to look at all these structures and rules and everything that have been built and everything that is touted as order and success and what looks good on a resume and why it looks good on a resume and who's put in prison and why they're put in prison and what is good and what is bad. And Aquarius starts to dismantle all of that through the lens of hyper-rationality. How could it be that someone spends 8 years in prison for marijuana possession but goes scot-free for, does that sound familiar? You know, will the people who stormed the Capitol be brought on a terrorism charge or a terror charge? So far none have. You know, what is fair? What is right? How is it that for peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters you had this kind of guard and for this you didn't have this? Remember, Saturn moved into Aquarius briefly between the middle of March and the end of June 2020 when people took to the streets. And as I've mentioned to you before, Saturn and Jupiter moved into Aquarius in the middle of December 2020, here to stay, Jupiter till the end of 2021, with an exception which I'll cover in a different video, and Saturn for the next 2 years. And this kind of examination of justice, equality, rules of the game, what needs to be questioned and what needs to be toppled over through a relentlessly critical and clinical rational edge. What measures up, what doesn't measure up, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And Aquarius is therefore the sign of social equality and social humanitarianism. So the so-called, you know, I really don't believe in the sort of age of Aquarius kind of crapola, because whoever you talk to gives you different answers, and then a group of people get together and sort of make up their own theory for what constitutes the age of Aquarius and what doesn't. For me, sort of, it is the age of Aquarius more from the perspective that the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, wherever it occurs, places or declares for the next 20 years as wherever this conjunction occurs as being extremely important and a primary theme in your life. But by that token, you know, 2000 to 2020 should have been the age of Taurus, which, of course, it wasn't. But it was according to me. So, with this age of Aquarius, so this Aquarian concept, the idea of what constitutes fairness and rightness and tries to elevate everyone and bring a certain social order and what is right for the group or the collective, these are themes that are going through a certain amount of rigor. Now, Jupiter, wherever it goes, wherever it is, a kind of inaugurating spark. It's an initiation. It is an auspicious new beginning. Saturn, wherever it goes, really will be testing, and Saturn is the refiner's fire. You know, Saturn is like the hammer that's going to beat the metal until it is burnished and it takes the shape that it needs to take. And so a lot of that activity is currently in play. Now, when I said I would go around the signs of the zodiac, and we covered Scorpio and we covered Sagittarius and we covered Capricorn with Venus in Capricorn, and now we're talking about Aquarius. And I knew I needed to cover Aquarius before I did the new moon in Capricorn video, which will be next, because a lot of what this new moon in Capricorn is encoding has to do with this transit that we're experiencing, where Saturn, especially in Aquarius, is squaring Uranus and Taurus. Now, there are other planets that meet up and have conversations with this square, but this square occurs 3 times, once on February 14th, once in June, and once in November of 2021. And I thought, if I'm doing this video, is it just going to be sort of a general Aquarius energy thing, or I'm going to be tying it to a transit? And after a lot of reflection and thinking I would make it about Saturn in Aquarius or Jupiter in Aquarius, I thought, no, let's make it about Mercury in Aquarius right now, because the deal is we've got Saturn and Jupiter already in Aquarius. We've got Uranus already in Taurus. Mars has joined Uranus, and Mercury has joined Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. On the 19th, the Sun will join Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter. On February the 1st, January the 30th, February the 1st, Venus will join Mercury, the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn. And then when we have the new moon in Aquarius on February the 11th, we're going to have all these planets in there. In the middle of all this Aquarius, you know, at the time of the new moon in Aquarius, February the 11th, we're going to have Mercury, Venus, the Sun, the Moon, Jupiter, Saturn, all in Aquarius. So all of a sudden Aquarius is going from being in a totally barren place prior to the middle of December, with a brief introduction in the middle of March, from the middle of March to the end of June in 2020, to really just being a full party. And squares, as I've described before, this kind of interlocking tension where something needs to forcibly break them apart in order to make progress. They are the sort of archetypal challenge that allows us to grow and progress, but we experience them as challenges. So the challenges between Mars and Uranus, two volatile planets in Taurus, and Jupiter and Saturn, and right now Mercury in Aquarius, soon to be soothed by Venus. But with Mercury, which typically spends 3 weeks in a sign, we can't ignore that Mercury goes retrograde on January the 30th in Aquarius, and then goes direct, I think it is February the 21st. February the 21st, it goes direct, and then leaves Aquarius on March the 15th. So retrograde January 30th, direct February 21st, leaves March the 15th. So the plot really thickens, and the sign of Aquarius is all of a sudden getting this lightning bolt of energy and energizing. And if we're not feeling it with the storming of the Capitol on January the 6th, I'm not sure what it is that we are feeling. Now, as you know, the sign of Capricorn, we're still dealing with Sagittarian energies and Scorpionic energies and Capricorn energies. And the one thing I'm going to say about Venus and Capricorn, to tie up my last video on Venus and Capricorn, is it is a transit this year that really does need to be looked at as sort of a re-greening or a rebirth of Capricornian energies, and very much being supported by this Aquarian energy. Now, squares have a violence to them. Mercury already conjuncted with Jupiter yesterday, and it's going to conjunct with Saturn tomorrow. And there's a lot being said about the fact that some of us can view this triple star, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn, together in the sky. Well, if you're going to be viewing it in the sky, you're going to have to view it shortly after dusk, because the sun is so close to them that the sign of Capricorn has to set for it to get dark enough to be able to, for you to be able to see these three planets in the very beginning of Aquarius. So good luck trying to find it. I'm going to try today, but I'm not sure how successful I will be. If I can see it, that'd be wonderful. The planet of communication, cognition, thinking, processing, comes into a sign it has to very much love, Aquarius, meets up with Jupiter and Saturn, that are creating their own revolution in this part of the sign. And really, Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius, I mean, that is a revolution. A revolution with legs. Mars and Uranus, when we look at transits of violence, you're typically looking at planets like Mars and Pluto. Uranus is really a liberating planet, and I don't always associate it with violence, but it has this kind of lightning strike capability that I would put on sort of after Mars and Pluto. I'd kind of look at Uranus. The thing is that Mars and Uranus are both planets that are not really happy in the sign of Taurus. It's a very weird, the Saturn-Uranus square is really one about liberation. Because you've got Saturn as a planet that holds you to the traditional and holds you to karmic responsibility and binds you and restricts you, and Uranus, which liberates you. So you've got these two planets locked. I mean, 2021 is sort of a year of liberation in that regard. The thing that makes the plot thicken is that you've got Saturn in a sign, Aquarius, that is all about its own kind of liberated thinking, and you've got Uranus in the sign of Taurus, which is all about preservation and not moving very fast and really not rocking the boat. So you've got the planet of restriction in the sign of liberation, that it rules and challenges itself where it challenges itself in kind of a relentless manner. And you've got the planet of liberation in a sign that is all about taking a nap, Taurus, and moving as slowly as possible and eating the good food and letting the earth kind of spin on its axis and not really interfering with a whole lot very much. And that makes for a very bizarre, you know, the square insofar as, and then you've got Saturn sitting in its own sign of Aquarius, and Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, that is squaring Saturn in Aquarius, sitting in Taurus. Venus, as the ruler of Taurus, is going to play quite an important role no matter where she is in her travels through this process. And you can't ignore that when we come to February the 14th, when Uranus and Saturn square each other for the first time, or February the 17th rather, forgive me, February the 17th I think, you've got Venus at that point in time in Aquarius. So it's a very intense dialogue that is beginning, that is about revolution, that is about liberation, and that is about actively for the next couple of years at least, and I'm talking thematically as far as the sign of Aquarius is concerned. How this relates to you personally, you're going to have to know where Aquarius sits in your chart and why that part of the chart is so important and why it's going to be the main dish for the next 20 years for you. But at least thematically, the idea of questioning constantly, and you know, the liberal side of things is more favored than the conservative. But I have to tell you, with Saturn in Aquarius, it's not like the liberal side of it is not going to face its own scrutiny. Basically, anything that does not have legs, anything that is contradictory, anything that is corrupt, anything that is hypocritical, there it is. There's the jewel I look for in every reading when I start talking extemporaneously. Everything that is hypocritical will be questioned with Saturn in Aquarius, squaring Uranus in Taurus. And the more revolutionary and the more violent planets like Mars and Uranus are going to be a little bit more contained. You know, it's this idea of people storming the Capitol but taking pictures of themselves while they're doing so. It still has an element of laziness and torpor. I wish I could tell you that the violence is over, because it doesn't feel astrologically like it is. It really doesn't feel astrologically like it is. And as I've mentioned to you, Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in a year of inauguration or in a year of a presidential election can often mean attacks or compromises on the life of a president. So let's just hope that as we get to January the 20th, and listen, January the 20th, Mars and Uranus are conjunct on January the 20th. I mean, you can't make this crap up. So if you're looking for a lightning strike kind of, thank you, helicopter, really? You know, whoever decided, because Los Angeles is such a grid and traffic can be such an issue, I totally understand why it is that helicopters are used for surveillance, but it's its own kind of terror tactic, you know? Like, you can't escape anywhere, and if they can't find you through ground means, they'll find you from the air. I mean, sometimes you've got to be able to find people that you need to find. I want to set the stage for Aquarius with this video, because there's so many transits to talk about. Mercury being in Aquarius has thrown us all into a space of conversation and alarm and processing about what equality means and where's their hypocrisy when Mercury goes retrograde. Well, we can't make this up. Mercury conjoined Saturn yesterday and Jupiter tomorrow. And as I've always said, it's not the date of the conjunction that interests me as much as what is leading up to that date. The most important date, as Mercury is currently direct, prior to Mercury going retrograde, is January the 20th, Inauguration Day, when Mars and Uranus come conjunct. Does this mean that there will be violence on Inauguration Day? Not necessarily. As I've said, it's not necessarily the day of, as to what leads up to the day. And certainly at this point in time, it feels like it would be a point of pride for a lot of law enforcement to ensure that it is a peaceful inauguration. And let's hope that it remains that way. The question is, as we lead up to it, will there be drama and violence? There very well could be. Certainly as we head towards the 20th, Mars will have squared Jupiter on January the 17th and Saturn a few days after. So Mars, the hot-headed, temperamental, violent, energetic Mars in Taurus, in a sign that it really does not like, restricted, is gonna try and rattle certain cages, and we're already seeing it. And is getting closer and closer to Uranus. Lightning strikes, epiphanies, quantum leaps of authenticity, squared by Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. So while Mercury is direct for the first time, those dates around between the 17th and the 23rd of January are really important. Mercury goes retrograde January the 30th, direct again February the 21st, and so on some level we're going to have to wonder what it is that we're going to be questioning and reviewing and reevaluating and rethinking during that time. Certainly, standard things about Mercury retrograde apply. Try not to travel. Try not to transact. Deal with technology issues. Try to keep a sense of patience. It'll force you to slow down. You'll be forced to go over things. The Scorpionic Mercury cycle will end on February the 8th, and a new Mercury cycle in Aquarius will start on February the 8th. So after February the 8th to the next time Mercury is retrograde in Gemini, we will be continually thinking and processing, as if all this planetary activity in Aquarius is not enough, Aquarian themes. Hopefully as Biden becomes president. What does it mean to have equality in our society? What does it mean for this to be inaugurated with Jupiter speeding through Aquarius? Speeding through Aquarius. Typically, Jupiter doesn't make it through a sign in 13 months. Jupiter's going to make it through Aquarius by the middle of May, only to retrograde back from Pisces in and finish up its task till by the end of the year. Sparks are being lit. And the magic, there's no other word I'm going to use right now, the magic is in the sign of Aquarius. And these squares in Taurus are really important and significant with this theme of liberation. And then when Mercury goes direct on February the 15th, February the 21st through March the 15th, it gets to finish up a certain aspect of this communication, but it's not finishing up because the Mercury cycle continues till about May or June. I'll get you the exact date later. That's all I'm going to say for now. This video is 25 minutes long, and I'm going to leave it at that because there's more to follow. And in some ways, it may feel like for the past 5 minutes or so I've just been repeating myself, but in some ways, it's just because I am sitting with the energies too. I'm kind of gobsmacked at where we're at. I'm gobsmacked at how it's playing out. It seems like a weird thing to say, But it really feels like the time is ripe for this kind of rational, unemotional evaluation. Still passionate in Aquarius. The deadliest of signs to get into an argument with. I mean, as I said, butter does not melt. It's like being in a lockjaw. Some animal that will not leave you unless it thrashes its way to the truth. In discussions around fairness. So let's fasten our seatbelts, and the time seems to be now, and the time seems to be ripe to be having these discussions and to be engaged in this volatile and challenging activity. We'll talk about other transits as time goes on. But certainly, as this new moon in Capricorn occurs with Venus present in Capricorn in a few days' time, it encodes, it embeds a 4-week cycle also, where the square between the communication planet, but especially Jupiter and Saturn and Mars and Uranus, are about to happen. So it's going to be an interesting, volatile, rocky few months. Indeed, a volatile year. So I will leave it at that. I'm sort of exhausted by this. I can't say that it's a conclusive video. I know that most of my videos try to reach some sort of a conclusion. It's just my going around the zodiac and why is every sign important introduction to Aquarius, and there'll be more to follow. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that for now. Start to get prepared for a Mercury retrograde. We've had a lot of forward movement since the middle of November. A lot of forward movement. And there's time for our minds to try and catch up with all the acceleration that has occurred starting January 30th to February the 21st. So certain things are going to have to slow down to be reconsidered and reevaluated before we start to move forward again, pretty damn fast again, after February the 21st. Okay? If you found this video useful, feel free to share it. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. I click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to be notified whenever I do new videos. This is an active part today, okay? Partly because it's Sunday also, I'm realizing. You know, it's not that, actually it's active, but I'm looking around, it's not that active. It's more active than we're used to it being active. That's the thing. That's what's so striking. It's like things have been so quiet lately that it's like infused with its own energy. I think, you know, on a day like today when it's 71 degrees, people are just longing to find a way to be out. Feel free to subscribe to the channel, click on the bell icon so that you're notified every time I do a new video. Check out some of my previous videos. All my videos are not quite this sleepwalky. I feel like the last 5 or 10 minutes has been a little bit sleepwalky. I apologize for that. Those of you who follow my channel know all of my videos are not like this. It's still an interesting and important video though, okay? I'm going to be linking back to this video often at the end of my other videos so that people have this context with the sign of Aquarius. You can't ignore where Aquarius is. And listen, a lot of the talk in this video has been around global social and political things. There's a whole personal narrative for each of us where the sign of Aquarius is in our charts. Okay, don't ignore that. If you know your chart, where is Aquarius? Which house does it occupy? If you're looking for a Messiah to come in some part of the chart to help rescue you, that's where it's going to come from. That's where the focus needs to be. That's where you need to go. That's the main course for the next 20 years, getting inaugurated in a big way right now. And you can't ignore what the rest of January and February and March are going to bring because of all these planets that come in here to get the party started. All right, kids. Talk to you later. My contact information is in the description area, so if you want to reach out to me to inquire about rates for personal reading or rates for making an easy-to-read version of your chart that shows you which sign is in which house and what the houses stand for, contact me there. Till our next video. Bye.